on a second. No one graduates until Security Guy Radio says so. Welcome to a collegiate version.
Oh, sounds painful. I've just been for one of them.
Of Security Guy Radio with Chuck, Animal House Harold, and Paul.
Tally ho, Bristow.
You have no collegiate nickname today for the show?
No.
Tally ho is it?
No, I'm collegiate enough.
Well, that's because you're British. You can get away with that kind of stuff. All right, well, we're continuing our series with Webster University today. And our guests are Mr. Robert Aquino and Mike Monte. And they're going to be discussing paying the living wage to security officers. Something you and I have talked about a long time, for many, many years. I think we should probably hold hands, roast marshmallows, and sing the Coke song because this is an excellent idea on paper.
Yeah.
But, as we shall see, it may be fraught.
And not all good ideas work.
With business difficulties, right? Right? But we'll see. Let's see if they can defend their positions. Robert, welcome to the show.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for having us.
Give me a little bit about your background.
Okay. So, prior military, and I'm just getting my feet wet with the security profession.
Now, is that because you were in the Navy? That's why you said you're getting your feet wet?
That's
probably
a good one.
Navy guys. Yeah. Well, you know, that's right. Navy's the best service.
That's a good one.
My whole family are Navy men, right?
Yeah. So yeah, work at the currently working at the Air Force Base as a security manager.
Oh, well, that's why it's all mixed up.
Yeah.
You're in the Navy. You were in the Navy working at the Air Force Base. Okay, that's all right. Figure that out.
So why did you choose a security field?
I have a little bit of a background with security. It was physical security in the Navy. I did some vessel board search and seizure work.
Oh, that's interesting.
So that kind of led me towards the security field and law enforcement.
Good.
And Mr. Mike Monte, former Air Force.
I was in the Air Force for 6 years doing, I was an acquisition officer. And then when I got out, I started working for the federal government, and I'm still there.
Oh, what do you do for them?
Can you tell us?
Yeah, can you tell us? Yes.
Yeah, it's not exciting at all. I work for the Defense Contract Management Agency as a program integrator.
Oh, that sounds very complicated.
It's not.
It's another show. So what kept you
far above us?
What attracted you to our field? Because usually our field repel people. That's why we're just wondering why there's an attraction to. What made you get into that?
Well, it was one of the degrees that Webster offered, and as long as I'm in school, I get the GI Bill. So it was a financial decision.
All right. Well, that's good. That's fair. That's a fair way to say it.
And your professor is one of the best around. So
yeah, I did some research before I took his class.
All right, excellent. All right. So you guys wrote a paper called Paying a Living Wage to Security Officers. That's between you two, right? This was part of your course. And the course is, it's a course within the program to obtain a master's in security management administration. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right. Why did you pick living wage to write about?
It's a hot issue right now. So we decided to take a stand and do some research. Our minds are open. Maybe you'll prove us wrong, but maybe it would be the other way around.
Well, as we like to say here in Security Guy Radio, we protect you with our voice because it's cheaper that way, and also because no one will actually pay us to listen to us anymore. So we do this for free. So we may not be that persuasive, but we will give it a shot. So Paul and I worked for guard companies for 8-9 years. We worked at Fox and Disney, and studio guards make a very good wage in general, right? Some reasons are because they're union, and they haven't negotiated. Other reasons are because they got a good contract. So
I think you have to look whether they're in-house as well.
Right. So in-house guards tend to make more than non-in-house guards.
Even in the studio business.
That's right. And studio guards, tend to be in unions, right, which drives the wage differently than outside. Ironically, they all do the same job. I don't think a studio guard does any different a job than a guard that works, at the corner. In fact, you could argue that the guy at the corner in the strip mall has a more difficult job dealing with public in general, where studios are invited guests. They're there for a specific reason. Usually it's not problematic, right? So give me just an idea, Robert, on what's the passion involved here? Why do you feel that this is something that's important? Because when you write from a position of belief and passion, you're more persuasive. Tell me what really motivates you to do this.
Well, so honestly, I followed suit with Mike here. He wanted to write about it.
Okay.
So I followed suit, but I found that it was very interesting when we were doing our research. I mean, like you guys said, it's a hot topic, and there's a lot of talk about minimum wage. Everybody knows what minimum wage is, but cost of living increases at a faster rate.
Right.
And the living wage actually is what closes the gap from minimum wage and that faster rate of living wage increase.
So you're saying here that the living wage should be substantial enough to ensure no more than 30% of the needs are spent on housing. And that's a good model. 33% should be your basic living expenses.
That's
if you
right.
get above that, you start getting financially upside down in your life.
That's
right.
right. Yeah.
So if we're going to use that as the base, Paul, that last show we did a couple weeks ago, didn't we show that the average national wage was about $24,000 a year for guards, right?
Yeah.
Except in the natural gas sector, it jumped up to $42,000 a year.
That's right.
Yeah.
I saw.
Did you see that? Yeah,
Yes.
interesting, right? But in general, no matter where you are in the United States, the wage is very close to the same thing, which I find interesting. Even though cost of living is way lower in Florida, for say, right? It's still $8.59 an hour, and in LA, not too much different.
Well, I think you've got to. When you're talking about living wage, you've got to look at whereabouts they are.
Correct.
The living wage in San Bernardino is a little bit different from the living wage in LA.
That's correct. Yes.
And how do you turn that to a minimum wage for a guard, for an officer?
Well, you'd have to base it off the zip code. MIT actually has a living wage calculator where they do it by zip code to take into account cost of living, housing, food,
transportation, recreation, all that stuff. Together.
childcare.
So I suppose it's jumping around a little bit, but if you're going to look at it that way by a zip code, then how would you enforce anything?
Yeah, it almost gets back to I want to describe it. In LA County, supposedly you need to make is it $110,000 a year minimum to buy a house. So a guard can't buy a house on $11, $12 an hour, right?
No.
Correct, but it's not.
But he's going to.
It's not a mortgage.
Right.
It's 30% of how much you're paying to live.
Right. So if the standard of care is we want everybody to be raised up to a level that's equal to what? What is it?
Well, for
and I'll agree with you, by the way. $19,000, $20,000, $22,000 a year is poverty, basically. What is the federal poverty? Isn't it $19,000, $20,000 a year? If you're making that much money, you're at the poverty level, right? So if we raise the people up, do we want to raise them up to 25, 30? What's your guys' idea on that?
Well, living wage calculated in California, just in general, because you can also go by state.
Let's use California. That's fair, because that's where we did most of the study.
But I've got to tell you, the living wage, having gone through this several times now, the living wage in different areas is far different. And different industries will give you a different living wage. So if you're doing work in Long Beach, the living wage in Long Beach is different from some of the city living wage in, say, San Bernardino again. Right? It's different.
That's right.
So the city of LA has, if you have a contract with a guard company with the city of LA, their living wage ordinance, I think, is $11.25 an hour, $11.45, something like that.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what you guys are proposing, right? To hit kind of $11-ish, $12 an hour wage. Now, is that wage going to include, in your analysis, fringe benefits? Are we including health care in that? Are we including vacation? Or are we including those sort of things in that wage?
It is included in the wage.
It is, okay. How do you pay for that? It seems like a small margin to pay for those other things.
If you look at the MIT calculator, it actually breaks down the expenses. But $11 is just for a single person.
Right,
if it's a single parent, one child, it jumps to about 27, I think. 27 or 22. I'm not sure of the numbers, but it's in the 20s.
Yeah. All right. So you say that 120 cities have adopted this living wage ordinance across the country and pay between 12 and 15. And these higher standards usually apply only to the employees of city service contractors, like we talked about, which was interesting, right? What did your study find happened after they stuck this wage in? Did we lose any jobs doing that? Did security, the amount of guards employed, not licensed, but employed in those areas, go down at all?
I didn't do research into that.
Okay, it's a good question, right? You got to kind of
it
think
is.
with the
I actually don't think it did, but mainly because most of these living wage ordinances are for city work.
That's right, what it said,
So
right.
out of very few, cities is like San Francisco have got a living wage. Now, interestingly, and this probably goes against our argument in a way, is that there hasn't been a great loss of work in San Francisco because of the living wage.
No, I read that. That's
Yeah,
true.
yeah.
And theirs is pretty substantial wage. Did you know about that? You got to put a minimum living wage, and then they add on top of that
It's enormous. It's,
taxes
I
and
don't know
extra
if it-
this and that, and the guard makes up $14-15 an hour, which is fine. That's great as long as somebody's going to pay for it, right?
Right.
And most city contracts are going to say, oh well, if I'm saying as a city you're going to make $12 an hour, then I will pay a corresponding bill rate, and the corresponding bill rate has to be something where I as a guard company make money, right? Because if I'm not making money, what am I in business for, right? So if you think this is a good idea, give me your main reason. Well, I mean, what drives this? We all want people to have a good standard of living. Absolutely, that's true. But what are some other motivations here that you guys think this is a good idea?
Well, other than the ethical reasons for paying someone a decent wage for decent work, there's also
Well, let's talk about the ethical. Give me your ethical argument, and I'll give you one back.
people should be able to afford to eat and support their families
Okay.
and have shelter.
Okay. So here's another ethical argument. If I'm paying everybody $15 an hour, then what is the kid that gets out of high school for the summer going to do to start gaining work in the workforce and find that cheap job? Because that type of labor is designed for that. It's designed for somebody to enter the workforce, not be a permanent job, not be a lifetime job, and move on from restaurants, move on from washing dishes, move on from all those,
Yeah, that's
usually attributed to younger people. And now we're converting these younger people, entry-level jobs where they learn work experience, into full-time jobs. What happens to that workforce? The youth is a huge workforce that's now unemployed permanently as a result of some of these things. What say you about that? Is that not ethical consideration as well? Because we are putting people out of work, a different group, by doing this, by the way. What do you think?
I think that you have a valid point. However, the average fast food worker is now growing. The demographic for the workers, service industry workers, has been growing in age, and it's not that there's a growth of other jobs for them.
Right.
So it's a compound. It's a huge problem, and there's no easy answer.
Well, tell me what you think about this, Paul. I think that our McDonald's type jobs, not picking on McDonald's, I just had a Big Mac before the show. All right, I love you guys.
We've noticed one or several.
Oh, please. Please, Mr. Paul Midriff Bristow.
Yeah.
All right. So here's an argument for that, where my son, who cannot get a job at McDonald's now, by the way, when he's out of college or in between gigs or in high school, used to be able to, as I did, because I worked at Carl's Jr. Boom, they'd hire in a second. They wanted people our age, right? Now we're having people that are more like Paul's age, the more mature age, that have to go to work for McDonald's because his pension's not fully covering things, and he's got more health insurance problems than he had before, and so on. So that demographic I think you're speaking of, yeah, we're seeing an increase in that. But again, if we replace somebody in the workforce with somebody else, somebody comes out of work. So I think an increase in the older people are because all these things you're talking about, increased health care, less Social Security payments, your pension didn't quite work out because it got stolen by the big corporation, things like that happen. People that should be out of the workforce have to go back into the workforce. And now we have too many people in the workforce that, all these older people should have been out. Now they're in, and who are you pushing out? So this is the complication you talked about. See what I'm saying?
But I think one of the things to remember is what codes are those jobs in. Now, if we get back to the security officer industry, security officers are classified as professionals. Okay.
Well, that's true.
I don't know what a McDonald's, service industry stuff. I don't know.
They're still not. They're not in the service industry at all. Guards.
No,
officers.
they're considered professionals.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, that does bring it into a little bit of a different realm. And that's some of the rest of the argument that you had, right?
I think that's a part of our research is that when we increase the living wage, we're not really targeting a demographic of a younger demographic. Yet we're targeting what you said is security professionals and people with and we can be a little bit more picky on with people that have a security background or experience.
So you're basically saying that living wage that you're talking about here should only apply to professional industries such as the security field, so the security industry.
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, not me. I'm kind of a hippie, and I want everyone to be able to afford stuff. But our paper did focus on security.
Yeah.
And I heard from a wise man that in Europe they pay security offers a lot more.
They do.
It's substantially more.
more.
Yeah,
So
it's
how
a
would you
different
account for the difference in pay there and here?
I have an excellent answer for you right after this break. Back in a minute on Security Guy Radio. Welcome back to Security Guy Radio. That's securityguyradio.com. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and the YouTube. Did I say that correctly, Brian? The YouTube? I'm so old, I can't get it all straight.
The YouTube.
The
No, I don't think
YouTube.
it's the YouTube.
Probably not. Don't
It's
need that
YouTube.
extra article. I just put those articles in there to stretch out the time so we don't run short on the air. All right, we're back with our two very special guests from the esteemed Webster University, Robert Aquino and Mike Monte. We're discussing paying a living wage to security officers. And their, what do I call this, their white paper? What do you call this? Your thesis, your white paper, your final exam? What is it?
Research paper just for this course.
Research paper for the course. But it's kind of like your last thing you submit to kind of get a good grade on. Is that it?
Oh, yeah, hopefully, yeah.
I'm a big dummy. I didn't go to college. I don't understand all this vernacular, all right? But I do know that word. Anyway, so at the break we're talking about why security guards make $60,000. Isn't it about 60 grand in Europe in some places?
It's pretty high.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's much better.
Who's calling?
Nope.
I don't. Oh, Mr. Bristow's phone's
Sorry
calling.
about
Is that your mom? Go answer it.
Hold on, let me see.
All right. So we're talking about why security guards make 60 grand in Europe. And really, it's a good question, right? It's market driven. And, and Paul, you're jumping on this, right? But, Europe goes back to King George slaying dragons. They've always had a lot of security problems in Europe, right? Dragons and Huns and...
Well, I think that's something to do with it.
No, it does have something to do with it. I'm
I
not
thought
being
they were
funny.
using CCTVs all over the place over there.
They're doing that too, but somebody has to watch them, otherwise it's not preventative, right? And why?
And by the way, CCTV in Europe started in '65.
Yeah, it's
as
been
soon
around a
as the
long time.
cameras are out
Yeah.
there,
So I think they are professionals because they're treated as professionals because they have some serious security issues, right? And prior to 9/11, I mean, what's the worst thing that happened in America as far as a giant security issue? A stolen piece of gum from 7-Eleven, a couple laptops from the studio. I don't know. We are a violent society for a lot of ways, but crime prevention with security guards is not to prevent murders. Nobody can prevent that, right? But you can deter thefts and things like that. So would you agree with that? That's why they're so high over there?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, I mean the problems, from terrorism, etc. I mean throughout Europe, has been going on for decades. Whereas not here.
So if we raise the living wage, do you think, Robert, that's going to increase professionalism and get us a better quality guard?
Oh, I believe so.
Oh, talking to Mike from there.
Yes.
Okay. Tell me why.
I mean, we're gonna get a quality guard. They're gonna be they're gonna take
Well,
more.
what do you mean by quality guard?
Well,
What's
we
a
can be
quality
more as I spoke about earlier. We can be more picky. Employers can be more picky about their employers can be more picky about who they choose as their employees. The turnover ratio will be down. They'll want to stay at their jobs. They won't want to lose their jobs, so the quality of work will be increasing.
Here's my experience with turnover. And I've probably hired at least 3,000 or 4,000 guards, contract guards. And then, we had hundreds at the studios, right?
Yeah.
People tend to leave not for 25 more cents. They will leave for $4 or $5, right? But if you're proposing everybody makes 12 and everybody's the same, then it's not going to be a wage issue that drives people to stay or leave, right? Therefore, your turnover is going to be driven by other things. You will have turnover. If everybody made $15 an hour, the turnover is driven by being treated like crap by your boss.
The morale factor.
Not being, morale kind of, but I'm just talking about plain old being treated improperly in the guard business, which happens quite a bit, unfortunately. You're treated like chattel, right? So, hey, come over here, and I want the day off. You can't have it, And people will stay for less wages if they're treated properly, as in most businesses, by the way. So I can't agree with you that that's going to create more retention, because if everybody's making the same, what's the motivation?
Well, I mean,
But if I made 10 over here and 15 over here, my retention on the 15 is going to be higher because I don't want to make 10, right?
see, if the other issue now, if you're talking about a minimum wage or living wage, not just for security officers, as in your point, everybody makes a large minimum wage, then you're still looking at the same group of people because everybody's at $12 an hour. So then you've got to go to $15 an hour for that higher quality of person.
Right.
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 So the question is, where does that
So
stop?
there's a creep,
Yeah, it's a creep, wage creep.
which
we
is
call it.
happening at the moment. I mean,
Yeah.
it's something that we can get into in a minute. I mean, the new minimum wage in California has caused a creep, right? And it's really, although, yeah, it's good to have a minimum wage of $9 an hour. I think it should, personally, I think it should be more, okay? But it does cause that creep because even the, how can I say, the lower quality officer that's earning a little bit more than $9 an hour now says, well, wait a minute, minimum wage is 9, I should be getting 10. All right, so
How do you address that?
Well, the chief argument in our paper, the point we were trying to make for security guards making a living wage was that in the defense industry, they've got security clearances, correct?
Yeah, that's right.
And one of the ways you can lose your clearance is if you have bad credit,
Okay.
really bad credit. So that's indicative of financial, distress, and you're prey to bribes.
Okay.
That would compromise security. And there's a lot of inside jobs in the security field, correct?
What
Where
do you
people
mean? Define inside. What do you mean?
Thievery rings.
Well, I don't. Paul and I don't think we would say we've seen a lot of it.
I must admit, I totally
It's very
disagree.
minimum. And
I
we've
guess you
seen-
haven't been on the internet like I have.
No, I look at all that stuff. If you look at it as a whole, there's please no emails. I'm probably wrong on this number, but there's 1.5 million cops in the United States, and there's 1 million security guards, and it's all roughly that, right? And as a percentage of the population of employees, you're not going to find a higher percentage of thievery and bribery and all that kind of stuff inside the guard force.
Well, see, one of the points that you made, I can't find the actual paragraph, but one of the points that you made when I was reading your paper was that, the instances of crime in the federal, area.
The
right?
different examples
Yeah,
that we
yeah.
cited, yes.
So those guys are being paid a pretty reasonable wage.
Not
We're-
TSA.
We're talking
Alright.
about, yeah, we're,
At TSA are getting reasonable wage. I mean, it's not
compared
we're
to a lot of
talking about
places.
Homeland
Reasonable.
Security and
absolutely.
TSA.
Yeah. So would you agree that they're getting paid a reasonable wage
I don't know
in TSA?
what they're getting paid. Not all of there are different bands of TSA.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
the
that's
lower
right.
bands aren't really making much.
I mean, LAX makes what are they like 11, 12, $13 an hour?
Yeah, I mean, it's above the normal.
Plus, you get all those benefits.
know.
I mean, so your fringe, 35, 40% fringe really is part of your wage as well, and that's pretty good in the federal jobs, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, what I'm saying is part of your paper notes the fact that there has been incidents of theft, etc., and rings within the federal government. And let's face it, every day we see somebody who's paid a lot of money being hauled away to prison. All right. So,
More so.
is it truly the money that causes theft? I mean, when you look at the the theft triangle, okay, it doesn't. It's a triangle. It's not just motive. I mean, that's not the reason why people steal. All right.
Yeah,
the
it's not
full reason.
economical usually.
Yeah.
There are other factors involved in it.
So I think just the fact that you're noting the fact that people who get paid a lot of money, still, okay, they take from the company or the federal, whatever the hell they're taking from, means that it's not just money related. It's not minimum wage related.
True, but if you aren't getting your basic needs met, you're much more susceptible to participate
No.
in crime.
It's
See,
a good
Mark, I
argument,
gotta tell you.
but I think that goes back to
Great argument.
great argument. Is that what you said?
I'm
Let's
just
see
kidding.
about that. It's a moral argument, and what you're implying on the opposite side of the argument is that people that do make a living wage, that are taken care of financially, aren't prone to stealing. And I can tell you from the 1,000 arrests, I mean, it's a cop, One was a doctor at Culver City that was shoplifting in Target and had $1,000 cash in his pocket. How do you explain that? It's not economical driven. It's moral driven. It's value driven. It's a lot of other things. It's power driven. A lot of thievery is to say, look what I did. I just screwed Paul because he thinks he runs such a great studio here, and I just ripped him off, right?
Yeah, but if you don't have enough food, then
People don't steal food. How many thefts of food have you had in the garbage
Yeah.
business?
I would totally steal a burrito if I could.
Well, okay. How many times have you driven down the street and I told this on the show the other day. A guy was at Chick-fil-A and asking for dough, and he'd sound like he was in need, wants money for food, except he's wearing $125 Nikes, and when he opened up his backpack, he had a whole bunch of cash in there, right? So there's
See,
scammers involved. I just don't see it as really a giant problem.
Well, I think, lack of money can be part of it.
Part of it, right.
Right. But just through my experience with security officers and people outside of the security field, to be quite honest, that I've arrested and investigated and all the rest of it, it's not typically the biggest piece of the reason why people steal.
So we're
Right.
going back to then hiring quality officers.
Okay, let's talk about that
Yeah.
argument. That's not a bad argument.
Right.
So Paul and I did the Academy Awards, and we had 500 guards a year for about 3 months or month and a half assignment. And we were trying to hire at 9 because our financial model is such that we try to maximize our profit. But we didn't really get a lot of applicants. But at 10, I had floodgates opening up at $10 an hour. And the competition next to me had a harder time recruiting at 9. It got me more guards. I'm not going to tell you that it got me a better quality.
Right.
It just got me
It
more.
just brought people through the door.
It brought people through the door,
Well,
and
yeah.
that's a big factor, right? But again, you go back to let's pick 12 as the number. We'll stick with 12. If everybody in the business is making 12, then I'm going to start feeling I'm worth 15 because I'm super guard, and you got to give me a raise. And then where does that stop? You see, that's the issue. Where if you let the market drive it, and Robert doesn't get hired every year because you're a screw up and you're going to get kicked out of the guard business and lose your license because you're not performing, and it's performance driven. And I'm going to pay Robert more money because he's spot on and knows what he's doing. Then it kind of takes care of itself. The problem is if you raise things too much, such as, and I'm using the restaurant business because a friend of mine owns a restaurant in Seattle, and she's going to go out of business because over the next 7 years she has to go from minimum wage now to 15, and she can't do it because she can't use half the staff to cook and serve, nor can she give everybody $15 an hour because there's not a margin there to support it, right? So would you say, knowing what you know about the guard business, if we take your 12 and I put, first of all, let's say I'm at 9. Now it's a $3 an hour raise. Oh, good heavens, there's the stop talking Chuck music. Perfect. All right. Remember what I was talking about because I'll forget by the time we come back, all right?
Okay.
Back in a minute.
I've forgotten already.
Back in a minute.
Talking about the super guard.
Superguard, that's right. All right, back in a minute on Security Guy Radio. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube at Security Guy Radio, securityguyradio.com.
The YouTube.
The YouTube. Welcome back to Security Guy Radio. That's securityguyradio.com. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube.
I fell asleep. I forgot what he was talking about.
You've been asleep the entire show. We're back with the Webster University 5-Series debate. Today talking with Mr. Robert Aquino and Mike Monte, Webster University grad students, and discussing their white paper on paying the living wage of security officers. Now, at the break, I was speaking about what again?
The super guard or something?
Well,
Something like that?
I think the argument is that if I'm going to pay you wage A, Robert, but I'm paying Mike wage B because he's a better guard, and in between is a progression, making you, the lower paid guard, to work better and be more proficient and more professional. If we have one wage for everybody, how do we go up, right? And if you take your basic wage, let's say it's 12, and I'm going to add, let's say it's 9 right now, and I'm going to add $3, that's $12 an hour, and I have a 1,000 hour a week account, right? I'm adding $3 an hour to that. I've now increased the budget of that client by $3,000 a week. See, I use the ones and the threes. It's easier to calculate that way, right?
And if you had $1 million hour contract, it would be $3 million. What's your point?
Well, my point is there is no money that any client's going to pay for that. They don't have that in their budget, right? It's very thin. The reason they're hiring the guard company in the first place is because they don't want to pay more money. If they did, they'd have it in-house. If they did, they'd hire a $100,000 year security director for a big corporation, and they'd pay the money to have in-house guards, right? So if I add $3,000 a week times 52 weeks, I'm at $150-something thousand. Now, what if I got to put Affordable Care on there? Affordable Care Act, that's coming up in 2016. and Securitas thought it might be between $2.50 an hour.
Yeah.
So, sake of argument, let's make it easy to multiply. It's now $3 plus $2. It's $5 an hour. $5,000 a week times 52 weeks. Let's make it 50 because I can't multiply. It's a lot of money, right?
It's $250,000.
Who's going to pay that? Who has that in their budget right now today to add $250,000 to a budget because I want to give these guys a better wage? And by the way, that includes other things like some fringe and holidays and things like that we can talk about, right? I think that's a problem with making it standard, right? Again, I want to roast marshmallows and buy everybody a Coke because I think morally, it's a great idea. But economically, it just can't happen unless you give there and you take away somewhere else. See what I'm saying, right?
Yeah. No. Well, I think I mean just from the latest minimum wage issue in California, there are clients cancelling security officers.
Oh, right and left.
Oh yeah. I mean, clients are saying, you know what? Yeah, we're going to have to add a certain amount to the bill rate. Okay, we'll drop this post.
Yep.
Now, there comes an issue with did they actually need that post in the first place, which is a completely different question. But clients will do that. They will go down to the minimum that they need. So does that is that causing a bigger problem for the security officer?
And I think they
business?
should have better wages. I always try to pay my guards the maximum I can. Paul and I both did it at the studios and in the private sector. We've always done that. And I've been criticized for that by my employers, saying we can't pay, we got to pay minimum wage for that. I won't do it, right? I agree with you on that premise. I'm just not sure we can get there by making it a law, by making it a standard, and forcing the market to become artificial. And again, when you change it to make it artificial, then something else moves.
Well, you're assuming that the market is pure right now, but it's not. It's artificial in
what?
favor for corporations with the tax breaks and the loopholes.
No. We're not talking about corporations. We're talking about the high school where my kids went, all right? That is a nonprofit, and they depend on donations, and they have a fixed budget every year. And if their annuity doesn't do good like it did one year, they lose their shirt when the thing crashed. And they don't have the money to just pull out of their pocket and say, let me pay that guy $15 an hour. Well, that account they actually do.
Although actually they probably do.
No, not always, though.
I
mean, so there's a lot of businesses that aren't giant corporations. And by the way, just so you guys know this, H&R Block is the largest business in the United States. It has like 9,000 or 9 million, employees. Small business. Small business are the majority of employees in the United States, without even a close margin to large corporations. There's nothing even close between small businesses and corporations. So I'm not buying the big evil corporation argument, because big evil corporations can't afford to pay more. They tend to pay more because they want to attract what? You said it before, quality. They want to raise the bar. They want to protect intellectual property at the studio. They want to protect, the nuclear power plant. They get that part.
I disagree. Look at Walmart. Look at McDonald's. They're not paying more.
Okay, but McDonald's and Walmart are based on margins that are different than public sector energy, which is infrastructure, which is critical infrastructure. And if something goes wrong, that we don't have a grid, all right? So in a grocery store, for example, when I worked at Trader Joe's, you have a can of beans and you stamp it. I think you mark it up 33%, okay?
But I think like Walmart, if you look at Walmart and their loss prevention area, they actually are paying above the norm. I mean, they may pay very low for the guy who, gives you a trolley, but loss prevention at Walmart is actually paying above the normal wage for security officers, or for that particular area.
So my son's,
and it's in house, by the way. That's all in house. Walmart is all in house.
Yeah, and so the greeter, whose grandma, who's retired, and she wants to stand there and say hi to you because she wants something to do. She's not living off that wage per se. Not everybody's like that. I agree with you, right? There's cashiers that need to support themselves. I mean, I get what you're saying, and I believe it in spirit, right? But what do we do if everybody all of a sudden makes $100,000 a year? Do I get $1 million? And should I have $1 million? Because if you're making 100, I need to make $1 million because I have been in the guard business, 30 years, and I know more about it.
Living wage isn't $100,000.
No,
and $1 million is.
Where does it stop? If you're saying $12 an hour for a security guard, and again, we said this before, I'm giving you 12 and you 12, but Michael, you think you're better than Robert. You want a raise. I'm leaving if you don't give me more money. Okay, here's 12. Here's 12. Here's 13. Here's 14. Here's 15. Wage creep. And eventually, if we lived long enough, you're 12, will look like it was $1.75 minimum wage when I was a kid. That's what it was, $1.75, right? And by the way, I thought I was rich when I got my first job at $1.75, right? Because there's more in the paper route. But that's all proportionate to what's happening in the universe. So $12 an hour now, 50 years from now, is going to look like peanuts. But if we don't raise the rate 12 years from 50 years from now, from 12, it's going to look small.
So
but it's going to go up. It always goes up. When do you stop?
But are we only looking at? I mean, the argument here is security.
I think it affects everything. But if you push the security sector up, now the next sector. Who's another professional that doesn't get paid a lot? Another sector. Something similar.
Janitorial, not really similar.
Well, you can
I
argue
think I think
there's skills in polishing marble
Retail.
floors and stuff. Retail, maybe.
Yeah.
But you guys were talking about it earlier. He's the super guard, and you're paying both of us. You give him a raise, and you're entitled to maybe give me a raise. Well, maybe if he can do my job because he's a super guard, you only have to pay him. He's doing two people's job, and you don't have to hire another person.
Okay, but if I start, let's say we go up from 9 to 12 tomorrow. You're the super guard, Michael.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to say, sorry, I can't pay you more because I just got a $3 hit to all my clients I gave them, and they can't afford anymore. You're stuck right there. Are you going to be motivated to go up? Where are you going to go? Where's up for you right now? Until this wage thing levels out and employees, contractors or clients, have more money, how am I going to give you a raise? Where my argument is... Well, my argument is if you let the market do it, there's places in downtown LA you guys don't know about, but we've gone down there to sell. And there's guard companies that pay guards cash, $8 an hour, under the table, forget licenses, we don't care, look the other way. And the clients think that's the greatest thing in the world because their bill rate's $12. I've actually done bids where client says, can you beat $12 an hour for a bill rate? Not unless they want to go to jail, right? Because there's actually a labor code. We talked about this at the break. Labor code section says you cannot enter into a contract as either an employer or a provider for guards or janitorial work unless there's enough money in the contract to pay all the taxes, profit, wages, all that kind of stuff. So right now, when people are cheating, do you think, here's my question to Robert and then Michael, if I give everybody $12 an hour tomorrow, what degrees of cheating is going to go up or down? Not on corruption side of guards, but the actual corruption side and cheating on the employer side of it. Am I going to say $12 an hour? I can't bill my client 15. I'm going to pay you, Robert, 10 down under the table. Here's some cash. Think it'll create a second market for that black market?
Yeah,
because there's one right now. I'm telling you right now, downtown LA, you can walk down there and get a job for cash under the table, $8 an hour. People take it. So if we increase the minimum wage, are we going to create a bigger market for that? It's a valid question. What's your opinion?
I don't have one. I think you're absolutely right.
It could happen, right?
Yeah.
All right, Michael, what do you think?
Yeah, it sounds feasible.
Okay. So it's a tough question. There's really not a right or wrong answer to this, but these are other things that you got to think about. If you take that model and apply it into a business, what the impact is. Am I going to have to? I'm telling you right now, as a guard company operator, if I had to increase the wage $3 an hour for everybody, the first thing I'm going to do is say, Michael, you make 50,000 years my schedule. Got to go. Sorry. I can't pull the profit out of the file cabinet. I got to get it somewhere, right? So what about that? Tell me I'm wrong. It's okay. Or tell me there's another argument for it, but that's where I'm going. I got to cut somewhere to make the money. I'm not if I bring it up to 12, I'm not going to be able to recover that $3 an hour that I probably can't charge to my client completely. I can't recover it. I can get a smaller office. I can not drive to the client and pay for gas. I can do all those overhead issues,
Mm-hmm. Understand. But I also want to get back to the point because I didn't really understand your answers when you were talking that money's not the only motivator, and that
you mean for a guard to work?
No, to prevent theft.
Oh, okay,
or to prevent corruption.
Yeah, talk about your triangle, Paul. Your theft triangle. Explain that.
Well, I mean, you obviously the theft triangle, motive, desire, opportunity, right? And actually, this is, I mean, apart from just the theft side of it, I mean, I think there's a lot more to what makes a good security officer than just the money. Right? I truly and absolutely believe that. Right? I think it's a small part, but just from a theft side, and this goes into what makes a good security officer, motivation. Right? Now, motivation, yes, you need more money or vengeance against the company because you think you've been screwed or whatever. Okay. Desire is really about what you feel about that company or wherever you work for. Okay, is there a real desire? And that comes down to, I believe, what makes a good security officer. Right, more than the money is, do they want to work for that particular person or that particular company? At the studios, we always thought it was because they worked for Fox or Warner's,
Right, it was a
or
good argument,
that.
But not really.
I don't know. I think
partial,
there is some of that.
But it comes down to the individual
yeah,
supervisor.
I think there is some of that. Comes down to the individual supervisor and perhaps their supervisors, and then obviously opportunity. Opportunity comes into it. Do you give anybody the opportunity to steal? Okay, you talk about credit references, right? One of the largest investigations of thefts that I did at the studio was from a person that had a lot of opportunity and had no credit.
No credit.
No credit.
No credit, right.
Okay, that should have sent a message.
Hold that thought.
Because if somebody's got no credit, you've got a bigger problem.
Got the fade-out music going. Back in a minute on Security Guy Radio. That's securityguyradio.com. Welcome back to Security Guy Radio. That's securityguyradio.com. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube. Continuing our continuing education series with Webster University. And our guest today, Mr. Robert Aquino, and let me extend my arm out here, Mike Monte. I better put my glasses on. That's pretty painful.
Yeah, you could see that.
All right, we're lift off during the break, Mr. Bristow. Finish your thought.
Well, I think, we was talking about motivators and all the rest of it, and I truly believe that it's not the issue of theft that is the issue with security officers. I believe that 99.9% of officers that I've met are honest. They want to do a good job. They are not going to steal from the company or whoever they're working for. And it doesn't matter whether you pay that security officer $8.50 an hour or $16 an hour. If you've hired a security officer that's going to steal, he's going to steal. Doesn't matter how much you pay him. Okay, it's not the motivator, in my belief.
We had a guy at ABC Studios where they filmed General Hospital, and he survived all the transitions between Securitas, Allied Barton, all the big companies. He had been there 28 years. And when we started paying him through Allied, as a matter of fact, Allied Barton, we raised him up to, I don't think it was higher than 10, 11, 12, right? This is 10 years ago. But before that, if he was making 10 years ago, what was he making for the last, 20 years? Great guy. He loved his job. He loved what he was doing. That's what he wanted to do. He didn't have to. He could have got more money across the street. Good employee. So I think there's a lot of other factors here that drive people's motivations for.
Well, I think the minimum wage issue for security officers is the attraction in the first place of people that are better educated. That's where it comes in. Is that initial, ability to bring in somebody that is computer literate, can write, can understand issues. Because that is one of the problems with the security industry at the moment, is that not everybody is well educated that's brought into the industry. They're trying hard. A lot of it's down to additional training and all the rest of it, but that's where that minimum wage comes in. And that's the argument, I believe, for a minimum wage.
Yeah, we had as many as 50% of the people at any one time that I've employed as guards over the years did not have an email address. Seems remarkable in 2013, which is the last time I dealt with that. Right? I mean, this is a modern age. Well, why don't they? To your argument, they probably don't make enough money to have a computer, so they got to go down to the library and use a computer. It's a big pain. And
if there's a library within walking distance, and they haven't got a car, and there's transportation issues, they haven't got money for transportation. So
I'm with you, Paul. I think the education part is what's going to drive that. Now we got about 2 or 3 minutes, so I'd like you guys to come up with some wrapped up final arguments.
Okay, so
this has been a good discussion, and I again I agree with you morally and ethically. I think it's right. I just don't see how we can make it work an economic model yet until we have the clients willing to open their pocketbooks and raise people's living, really. So Robert, we'll start with you.
So we've talked about all, different jobs and different professions, but we're specifically talking about the security profession here. And and you guys have argued that it's not bribery, or it's not theft, and it's not money that have turned security officers into bribes and theft. But we argue that it is, and giving them a little bit more through living wage, I think, will deter them from taking money and bribes. I don't think if you offer a bribe just through friendship to a security officer, I don't think he'll turn on a bribe. But if you offer them money, I think they will. So our bottom line is that giving them a little bit more money will deter them from bribery.
Mr. Michael?
You spoke of most of the guards that you've met, 99.9% or something like that, right? As being decent, hardworking, honest people.
Yep.
Shouldn't decent, hardworking, honest people make enough to have decent shelter and eat and take care of their families?
I agree with you 100%. They should.
That's
The question's how. How do we do it right?
But that wasn't your argument.
It wasn't my argument, but,
No, but I could ask
I've got
him
to
something.
change.
No, we should, right? But the question is, how do we do it? So, guys, this has been a great discussion. Very good. Did you enjoy yourself?
I did. Thanks for having us.
Are you going to come back
Fun.
with your next paper?
Very
a little
much.
more, sharpen your pencil a little bit, and, right? Back in a minute on Security Guy Radio. That's securityguyradio.com. Welcome back to Security Guy Radio. That's securityguyradio.com. Oh, boy. I'm tired. .com. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube. Now, Paul, we have brought in studio Mr. Chris Silva. He's going to be explaining to us how this whole Webster debate class took place. Chris Silva, CPP, MBA, ILO. Good heavens, man. ILO. What does that stand for?
That's
That's hard to say. I say that when I'm drunk.
Infrastructure Liaison Officer offered through InfraGuard.
That sounds incredibly important. But the most important part is Chris is the Professor of Security Management at Webster University. And Chris, give us a little bit about your background. It's really kind of interesting how you got into this teaching part of it.
I enlisted in the Army after high school, did that for a few years, got out, went to college on the Army's dime, and I studied criminal justice, ended up in the security field in Los Angeles, and in some technology, studio, various vocations.
God help you.
And once I had completed a master's degree myself, I was approached by the university.
By Webster.
By Webster. And they asked me to start. I started off teaching one course, and at this time I'm teaching 5 courses year-round, obviously on a part-time basis.
I was amazed to find out that Webster University, it's a nonprofit. It's on 3 continents, 60 cities, 148 countries, primarily because they target military people to re-educate after they get out of service. I think what a great organization. That's fabulous. So we only got about 2 or 3 minutes before we start the next show, but I want to have you tell everybody how we kind of came to this idea, how you came to this idea to have us come on the show and debate these things. I think this was a great idea.
So one of Paul's emails popped up as in my inbox. Checked out the Security Guy Radio.
Oh, yeah.
Reached out to you, said, hey, let's put this together. Great minds think alike, and here we are.
So do you think the students, when you presented that to them, was that kind of a novel idea? Did they like it at first, or did you have to talk them into it?
Well, as the professor, you know, what I say goes, right?
Oh, that's true,
Oh.
yes. Just like on the show, isn't that right? Nobody listens.
But, I like to bring in fresh ideas. We went to a business and did a security survey for them as a class. So I think that bringing the real world in is the key to this.
I think that's critically important. Not a college guy myself. I would fall asleep in class, bored to death. They didn't keep my attention. but I'm a practical application guy. I come out, I look at something, I say that'll work, it won't work, and if I can't make it work, I figure out a way to make it work. And I think hands-on, is important. And these two young guys, believe me, if they walk into some board meeting in a corporation and start arguing their position, like, I don't think it's fair that we don't make enough money, they'll throw them right out the door. They got to be able to speak for yourself. And I think these guys did very well for a first time, by the way. I thought it was good.
That's right. And
tell me some more stuff coming up in our next series. We have 4 more series to go, and what are some of our other topics we're going to be covering? I think
we're going to be talking about
drug testing was one.
Drug testing, strengthening industrial security in light of the Edward Snowden case.
Oh yes, that's a good one.
Yeah. Security officer actions upon discovery of unattended items and objects, and then employing physical fitness standards of security officers.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah,
that's something to
that would be very interesting.
Very interesting, yeah. Well, we've got to wrap up. Really, thanks for the opportunity to do this. We'll have you on each show to introduce the next topic and stuff. And until next week, we'll see you next week on Security Guy Radio with our Webster University series. Thanks for tuning in. Follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Twitter.
Cheers.
Good night.